Howdy, everybody. Please let me know if you can't hear me too well. I have put my microphone in another county. Sorry for last week. I got pulled off the call mid-call because of an emergency that someone else had, and that's okay because that's what I help folks do. And sometimes things are pressing. When folks are standing at your door or, police are on the way, it really helps if you've got someone in here who can talk you through things and let you know what to expect and what to say and what to do. And sometimes that ends up being me, but my goal is to get folks trained up to where they can handle their own stuff. So what are we going to talk about this week? Well, it's going to be a little bit of a continuation of what we were doing last week, hopefully without the abandonment of the call mid-call, although Courtney did a good job of carrying on. Let's see. So today we are going to discuss the registration of the legal name because it does help every single time we talk about that. It seems folks get it just a little bit more. So it seems less and less in our Facebook group anyway. I'm getting the question, why register the legal name? So as folks watch the videos, the more they hear things, the better that it is, because I don't know about you, but my skull is fairly thick and sometimes I have to hear things more than once. So what are you doing when you register the legal name? Well, first off, I want to read something to you. I've often said that commerce is a battlefield, and we are given a monopoly piece to play on that battlefield, and that is the legal name. Thing is we're not using the legal name correctly. It's like being given a sword and put on the battlefield, and we're swinging it, but we're holding the wrong end. And that's what we're doing with the legal name. We're using it wrong, and it gets us into a lot of trouble when we use it wrong. We also get hurt. Why? Because the other party usually isn't using it wrong, unless you're in civil court, and they're also using it wrong too. So it's like having two debtors in court. So folks know that you can either be, well, I won't assume this, but a lot of folks know that you can either be a debtor or a creditor. And every time you have an interaction, one party plays the debtor and one party plays the creditor. And in a good interaction, that position can change, but you want to try to hold the position of creditor all the way up to the point where you have to ratify your agreement in the public, which means that's not really suing someone, because you should always have a agreement before you go to court. Never go to court without an agreement. That includes a civil case where you're suing someone or they're suing you. It also includes a criminal case, because who's the other side in the criminal case? Well, the state or the federal government, but you're facing a prosecutor. So you're on a battlefield. This entire realm that we live in is a battlefield. We fell into this realm after the fall of man in Genesis. And I know a lot of my listeners are not Christians. I know that I've got Buddhists and Catholics, and I know Catholics aren't really Christians, right? We've got folks that are Muslims that listen to our stuff, but I will always resort to the good book that the Christians use, because I've yet to find anything wrong with it. And after the fall of man, we fell into commerce. This is a realm that is created by Satan. Why? Because he couldn't get what he wanted when we were all getting what we wanted from God, what we needed from God. So now we're in a realm where we have to contract, and it sets us up to look to something other than God for salvation, i.e. money. And if you're not careful, you can worship money. And if you worship money, it'll lead you into a very bad place. Yes, you can get the world and riches, but we came into this world with nothing, and we go out of it with nothing. So you can't take it with you. So listen to this. Rights. This is an excerpt from a federal case about rights. It says, neither accorded to the passive resistant, nor the person who is ignorant of his rights, nor to one indifferent thereto. It is a fighting clause. Its benefits can be retained only by sustained combat. It cannot be claimed by an attorney or solicitor. It is valid only when insisted upon by a belligerent claimant in person. That's United States versus Johnson, 76F SUP 538. So let me reread the emphasis part here that I hit on. It is a fighting clause. Your rights are, it's a fighting clause. It's combat, okay? Its benefits can only be retained only by sustained combat. Your rights cannot be claimed by an attorney or solicitor. It is valid only when insisted upon by a belligerent claimant in person. In person. What is a person? Are you a person? Am I a person? Who's a person? Well, there's a person. Hey, Mike. Well, not really a person. That's a man. You're on mute, but that's okay, dude. I'm just blabbering for a few minutes before we get to questions. So rights are something you fight for, okay? If the wool has been pulled over your eyes, then blame none but yourself should it remain there, for the wool has not been made a thing which has permanence. Rather, it is the obligation of the befooled to remove the deception from his own eye by seeking out the reality of existence through knowledge and sincere desire for truth. Okay, you will not get your way in this system if you don't know who you are and you're not willing to fight. So what is the fight? Okay, now we don't want to be belligerent. I know that that says by belligerent claimant in person, but that's a different meaning than being belligerent. You don't want to go in and argue. You want to avoid argument and you want to avoid silence. Silence and argument make you a debtor. They make you dishonorable. The Supreme Court's ruled over and over that in any matter where you have an obligation to respond and you fail to do so, you are at fault. So silence and argument are dishonorable and make you a debtor. You can also do another thing called unconditional acceptance, but unconditional acceptance usually isn't in your best interest. That would be like if I looked at Mike and said, Mike, you owe me $1,000, and Mike pulled $1,000 out of his pocket and handed it to me. Yep. He would be an honor, but he would also be out the $1,000. It makes you a creditor because at that point I couldn't sue him. I couldn't take him to court, but usually that's not in your best interest unless you have an unlimited amount of currency. And in some forms we do, but we're not going to get into that particular avenue tonight. The other thing that you can do is called a conditional acceptance. And a conditional acceptance isn't a conditional, really isn't an acceptance at all. It is a form of an acceptance, but it isn't. What it does is it throws the ball back to the other person. So here is the, hold on just a sec, got to send a thing here telling people I'm on a Zoom call and turn my phone off. So let's say that I went up to Courtney and I said, hey, Courtney, you owe me $100. Courtney can conditionally accept that offer. She could say, well, Bill, I conditionally accept your offer to pay you $100 upon proof of your claim that I owe you $100. Now, when I first went up to Courtney and said, you owe me $100, at that moment, I am the creditor and she is the debtor. How so? Well, she owes me either $100 or she owes me a response. Either way, she's a debtor. When she says, I conditionally accept your offer to pay you $100 upon proof of your claim that I owe you $100, at that point, the ping pong ball got bounced across the table. She's now the creditor and I'm the debtor. If I were to sue her at that moment, going into court, all she would have to do is show that she had responded, conditionally accepted, and I had not responded, and I'm the debtor, and the judge will always rule on behalf of the creditor if the creditor stands on their claim. Simple enough. And of course, to do that appropriately, you're going to want to do it in writing, which is the private administrative process, which we've talked about in other audios. So what have we faced this week? Gosh, Courtney can help me out here. So far this week, we've worked with CPS in several states. We've worked with family cases. We've worked with criminal cases. We've worked with folks who have gotten put in jail. We've worked with folks who've gotten put into a mental institution. So that doesn't always mean you're crazy, by the way. And I got a cool little story about that. So I was in court and I had an attorney that was publicly appointed. It was federal court. If you've ever been in federal court can be quite intimidating. It's a little different than state court. State court tends to be more of a circus with a bunch of stuff going on, but federal court's very intimidating. And I said some stuff that I was trying to let the judge know that I knew a little bit more than the average bear. And so the judge looked at me at one point and he said, "Are you crazy?" And I said to myself, uh-oh, I'm in trouble here. Because I knew enough at that point, and this was about 8 years ago, I knew enough at that point that I knew that if I said yes, I would go to a mental institution. And I knew that if I said no, how do you prove? That's a statement. How do you prove that you're not crazy? Well, you get an evaluation at a mental institution. So I knew I couldn't answer yes, and I knew I couldn't answer no. So I said a quick prayer, and the words that came out of my mouth were great, and I don't think they were mine. The words were, do you have, are you, not the capacity, do you have the credentials? Are you credentialed to make a medical determination about psychological health? Something like that is what came out. I asked him a question. And when you ask a question, you're acting as the creditor. When you're asking a question, you're acting as the king. That's why they call it as king. So when you're asking a question, it's very difficult to find fault with you. So if you're interacting with authorities, stop before you make a statement, rearrange it, put a question mark at the end of it, then let it come out. Because if you ask the right questions, you can box your adversary in. The judge just smiled and moved on. So it's very easy. If you start doing anything non-traditional in court and you get asked the words, especially in a criminal court, are you crazy? Because they'll ask you that. Judge will ask you that, and they know what they're doing by boxing you in. Keep that in mind if you ever find yourself in that position, because just because you get asked that question, because I've known more than one person that's been asked that question, and any statement usually ends up with you having at least a 72-hour mental hold. And that doesn't mean you're crazy. That just means you didn't know how to answer the question. So why would you want to register the legal name? Well, the legal name is your piece to use in commerce. You as a living man cannot, or a living woman, cannot engage in commerce. It's not possible. Why? I've had people tell me, they're like, Bill, I want to prove that I am a living man. And I want them to stop treating me as an artificial person in court. I'm like, well, that sounds great, but how are you going to do business? Well, if I can prove I'm a living man, they have to let me go. Well, that may be true. That may not be true. It depends on the circumstances of the case. However, it may not be in your best interest to try to pursue that, because they literally can't interact with the living man. Okay. Now there is a way to separate your private self from your legal name. Okay, with an assumed name certificate. But there's no way that you're going to come out okay just by proving you're a living man. You have to know how to play the game. If I walk up to Mike's on the call, if I walk up to Mike and I punch Mike in the nose, Mike has no idea what my name is, and I walk off. He has no idea who to press a claim against. So real quick, let's do screen sharing. I'm going to hit something that's folks that have been on the call before. No, let's see here. Screen share. We're going to do screen. Okay. And let's look at something here real quick. I've shown this document before on these calls, and it is a wonderful document. The Kentucky Assumed Name Statute. This is a writing by Margaret Megan Walton, whom I think is in the Kentucky National Guard, and Thomas E. Rutledge, who is a bar registered attorney in Kentucky. And here's what they tell us about the Kentucky Assumed Name Statute. And this applies to all the assumed name statutes across the U.S. in every single state. Okay. Why certificates of assumed name? And it says, let's make this a little bigger here. Okay. The purpose of the assumed name statute is to preclude sailing under false colors, so that the persons doing business may know who is the real party to the transaction. Who is the most powerful entity in the state? The most powerful entity in the state is not in the government. It's not the governor. A lot of folks, we elect the governor, so we think the governor is the most powerful entity in the state. That's not true. The most powerful entity in the state is the one over commerce. That's the Secretary of State. Every state has a Secretary of State. Okay. Yes, the governor is the strings to the military that's in the state, and every state is a nation, by the way, in the private. Every state has an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judicial branch, and a military. Those are all the things that are necessary for a nation. So each state is an independent nation in the private. But the one who holds the purse strings, that's the one. Now, yes, the executive branch, the governor and the executive branch makes a lot of financial decisions, but the one who's over commerce, That's your Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State holds more power. We can talk about some other misconceptions that we might have, like who has more law enforcement power. A lot of folks may think the federal government does, but did you know if you have an FBI agent, a Treasury agent, an IRS agent, a city police officer, a state police officer, and a county sheriff all standing in the same room, which one has the most authority? County sheriff. And the federal government does not like us talking about that or knowing that. Your county sheriff, that's one of the things we have here in the US. I know we got one guy on the call right now from Australia, and I'm not sure that any nation has something that is equivalent to what we have here in the US with the county sheriff. We're very fortunate to have the position of county sheriff. And in Kentucky, we have things called constables still. And people just don't understand how powerful those positions are. A lot of times the people who are in those positions don't understand how powerful those things are. So if you want to look up a business and know who the registered agent for that business is, what is a registered agent? A registered agent is someone who can accept service of process. So if you walk into a Kroger's, okay, and while you're in Kroger's, you get damaged. Okay, let's say you slip and fall because the manager poured oil on the floor and didn't put a sign up. Okay, so you walk in, you slip and fall, and he says, "Hi, you slipped and fell," and of course you break your butt bone or something. So now you have a claim. How do you know who to serve a claim on? This is Kroger's. It's huge. There's a Kroger's in every county. There's Kroger's all over the country. How do you know where to send your claim? Simply go to the Secretary of State website, because Kroger's has to file with the Secretary of State in the state in which they're doing business. They have to register with the Secretary of State in order to do business legally. And there will be a registered agent there. That is the one that you would send your service of process to. Okay. And it would also give you some information regarding the domicile, the mailing address, that sort of thing. Now, you are walking around with a legal name, and you don't have that name registered with the Secretary of State. So you're engaging in commerce with a business, because your legal name is a business. It's a Cestui Que Trust, CESTUI QUE Trust. Look that up. It's a Cestui Que Trust. And that particular trust, you're walking around using that. That's a corporation, because a person is not a man or a woman. A living man or woman cannot contract. That's why it was so important for Adam to give everything names. We have to have names for things, or else we can't be on the same page. If you pointed a chicken and call it a cow, and I pointed a chicken and call it a horse, we'd have no understanding for each other, right? So what is a person? Let's look up the definition of person real quick, and then we're going to move into some other areas. But this lets us know why we have to register that name in order to do business, and why it gives you much more power when you're in commerce to have that name registered, okay? Because you have standing. Standing is a very important term. So person, in general usage, a human being. Well, we've covered this. What is a human being? It's not a man. Why would they call it a human? What's hue mean? Hue means color, color of man. Ever heard of the phrase color of law? That's where someone acts as if there is a law when there isn't. They're acting under color of law. They're acting under something that's fake. A human being is an entity that is the color of man. It's the legal name. But when somebody says, "Look at all these human beings," and he points at a bunch of men and women in a field, those aren't human beings. Human rights. Does that give you a different definition to human rights now? And I got to be careful. Sometimes when I say these words, I emphasize them in a different way. Like human is human to me, and I'll say human to people, and people are like, "What? What does that mean?" So in general usage, a human being, i.e. a natural person. A natural person, as compared to what? An unnatural person? You can't look up these words in Black's Law, by the way. If you go to reference them, it'll give you a circular trail. You'll always come back to person. So if you go to human being, it'll oftentimes say see person or see legal person. Though by statute, what are you dealing with when you're in commerce? It's all statutes now. Statutes, codes, executive orders, promulgations, ordinances, etc. May include labor organizations, partnerships, associations, corporations, legal representatives, trustees in bankruptcy, or receivers. So what are you doing when you are using a legal name and you've not registered it? You are acting as an individual. That's why you see on your 1040 is an individual income tax return. What is an individual? An individual is a man or woman who is using a legal name that is not registered. And there's a whole section of law that has been made up for unregistered men and women. Why? Because they don't want you to register it. When you register it, you are within the law and it gives you tons more power. Suddenly you cannot be held liable for the deficiencies or for the problems engaged by that legal person. Okay. So that doesn't mean you can still damage someone. If I walk up and punch somebody in the nose, I'm causing them damage, and the system does have means in place to affect a correction for that, right? Because we have to be governed. You either govern ourselves, we're either governing ourselves or someone is going to govern us for us, and man can't govern himself. So we either have to be under government or under God. So what is a individual? An individual is a man or woman who's not registered the legal name. Once you register the legal name, you have a differentiation between the first name that you were given when you were born, which is a given name and a surname, and the legal name. And you have a government document that will prove it. And I will show you. Why? Because I happen to have them here. All right, hold on, let me grab it. I keep these beside the door. Why do I keep them beside the door? Well, if somebody knocks, I want to be able to grab them. Okay. This is funny. This is not my Minnesota one. This is my Kentucky one. Okay, so we often talk about registering other states, and a lot of folks know we push you to register in Minnesota because Minnesota is the one state where you can register where you are the holder, and that's an important term. So there's two entities on this particular document. So this is my Kentucky certificate of assumed name. You'll see I've got it highlighted, and I've even got it laminated. Okay, I tend to destroy stuff quickly, and I want to be able to stand out in the rain with this and it not destroy, right? So here's the legal name, and here's who the legal name belongs to. This is the holder. Now you'll see here that it says it has been adopted. Okay, I'm going to file an amendment to this because I don't want to adopt this name. I'm going to change things a little bit. And if you read your local states, the state you're in, if you read their statutes, you can determine what you need to do and whether or not you're going to want to file your legal name in your state. Okay, I do advise if you're starting out and you know nothing and you're in a problem, file your legal name, register it with the state of Minnesota. They're the one state that does it right. It'll cost you $83. It lasts 10 years. You can do it all online. Do not even try to contact their office and do it. Don't try to mail it in and do it. Just do it all online. Okay. What do you get when you register the legal name? You get three forms when you do it in Minnesota. You'll get a you'll get the name registration, which looks like this right here. Okay. But you get two other certificates. You get a certification of record. See that right there? And you're also going to get a certification of existence and registration. The certification of existence and registration is a certificate of good standing. What does it take for a corporation to remain in good standing? Well, they have to pay their taxes. Okay. They can't have broken any laws. For you to remain in good standing when you register your legal name, all you have to do is pay their fee and re-update it every year. That's it. Every year when you register with the state of Minnesota, you will get a email. You'll click on a link, and that lets the state of Minnesota know that you are still alive and you're still using that assumed name. That's it. It's free. So very easy. It takes 30 seconds. That keeps you in good standing. When you are in good standing, you can stand in court. An individual has no right to stand in court, and that's probably why most individuals who get prosecuted end up plea bargaining out, or at trial they lose, especially if they're doing that with the United States, because the federal courts are very good at contracting. Federal judges are masters at contracting. And if you find yourself in a federal court, does the judge understand this stuff? Well, they may not understand initially what we're doing by registering the name, but they figure it out real quick. We're learning that. Okay. So why would you want to register in another state besides Minnesota? Well, if you in Kentucky, for example, when I read through the statutes, I found out a few things when I read it really closely. First off, there's no obligation to advertise it in the newspaper. That's been a contention with some of the folks in the group in their states is trying to advertise their Minnesota DBA in the newspaper in another state. But in Kentucky, I don't have to register. I don't have to advertise it in the newspaper. With the Kentucky assumed name statute, when you register the legal name, when you apply for the assumed name, the certificate of assumed name, you do not have to sign it. So there's no under penalty of perjury. So you don't have to swear under penalty of perjury that you're the owner. So depending on your state's laws, you may also want to register your name in the state that you're in. It'll make things like getting a bank account easier because you want to get away from individual stuff. You're no longer an individual once you register the name. What is an individual? An individual is someone who thinks they are the legal name. So a cop pulls out, you pull out your license and hand it to a cop, and the cop points at the license and he points at the legal name in the picture and he says, "Is this you?" Think about what he's asking. What's the truth to what he's asking? The truth is that isn't you. That's an image, a two-dimensional image. It can't be you. And it is a legal name. It's a corporation. And when you've registered the legal name, you've actually changed the status of that legal name. It's now a business, and you can prove that it is a business. You can go get a business bank account. I have a business bank account, and they send it to the business, which is William Ernest Farrell II. It's a business bank account. Businesses are made to be secure. Residences are made to be broken into. You try breaking into a business, they have all kinds of safeguards. If an IRS agent wants to take money out of a business account, they have to get a warrant. But they can pull money out of your individual account really fast without a warrant. The IRS does that all the time. They garnish wages all the time. They can't do that with the business account. So you want to get away from having individual stuff. So if you register your name and you have a driver's license, what have you just done? Well, you've pretty much turned the driver's license into a really weird business card. It's got your weight and your height and stuff on it, but it's no longer really a license. Licenses are for individuals. Now, that doesn't mean once you register your name that suddenly things change in the DMV system, but you definitely have more standing in court. You have a lot more standing in court. As a matter of fact, if you sue me and your name is registered and mine's not, if you know what you're doing, you file the right motions, you can easily beat me because I have no standing in court. Also, if the other party is represented by an attorney, unless that attorney has registered that name, you can file motions that say things like, and I know this because I have motions in front of me for federal court, motion to show corporate power of attorney. That attorney is going in there and he has no power of attorney. Think about this. If you were suing someone and I went into the clerk's office to file a motion in that case, and I'm not you, what would I have to show to be able to do that? I'd have to show a power of attorney. But an attorney gets hired by an individual and he acts as the individual. Well, up until it comes time to pay the fine or go to jail, and then he says, "Oh, I'm out." Right? So where's the power of attorney that should exist for that attorney to be able to file into that case? Another motion we have here is motion to disqualify attorney. We got the attorney's name for illegally doing business as, and then we have the mortgage corporation, the bank. Okay, so he's illegally doing business as that entity. These are all things that we're using to try to get the other sides to get a default judgment. Notice to clerk of court that attorney, and we've got the attorney's name, permitted to illegally file into case. Okay, so if an attorney is filing into case and he has no corporate power of attorney for you, and your name isn't registered and he's not registered as your business name holder, he is using your name just as illegally as you are if you're not registered. So what happens when you file these things into the court case? Well, they know they're not dealing with a typical plaintiff or defendant, for one thing. And there's a very good chance that they're going to try to come to you the judge is going to tell them to come to you to try to get this settled before it goes to trial. And if that is the case, what is that called? What is it called when they do that to us? It's called plea bargaining, right? Or we're just going to get a default judgment, and then they're going to try to seal the case, and that way folks can't read these records because they don't want this stuff out. So if you register the name and you understand what you're doing when you register the name, what you have done, it becomes very powerful anytime you're interacting in commerce. So one of the things that I don't have is I don't have a driver's license anymore. What do I have? I put in my packet that I drive around with. I've got this thing right here. It's a voluntary surrender of license. I do not want the cops pulling me over and I'm on a not a suspended, but an expired license. They say, well, driving on an expired license, that's against statute. I don't have a license, so how can it be expired? And it was funny, when I went into the DMV to hand my license back, they wanted to punch a hole in it and hand it back to me. And I said, what are you doing? And the girl said, well, you're going to want to use this for ID. Like, but you just invalidated it by punching a hole into it. She said, yeah, but you're still going to want to use it. So they want you to use it, even though I said, isn't that, aren't you trying to coerce me into committing fraud? And she snatched it back and ran to her supervisor. And she said, well, we can destroy it. And I said, well, you can destroy it, but I would like to get something back that shows that I gave it to you. Otherwise, I'm going to be on the side of the road and the cop is going to be trying to pin a license on me when I'm not an individual. So if they want to arrest the legal name, well, let them have at it. They can arrest the legal name. People were kind of understanding this a little bit back in 2012 when I first started studying this. There were some folks that went to court with a certified copy of their certificate of birth. And when things in court weren't going their way, they would toss that certificate of birth over the bar and they would say, I surrender this to the court. I no longer want anything to do with it. And then they would walk out. And did it always work? I don't know. I know that it often froze the court. There was one instance where a judge started hollering for the bailiff to arrest the guy, but the guy wasn't he wasn't inside the bar. The bailiff stepped across the bar. The guy turned around and said, I do not give you consent to touch me. He said, these proceedings are done. He said, the case is dismissed and I'm out. And a few weeks later, his case was dismissed. It was a criminal case. The judge will do everything that they can to try to get you to step across the bar with no terms or conditions, because that's their ship. And when you step on their ship, they have all the power. I saw a fellow one time who was trying to stay on the other side of the bar, and the judge kept saying, I can't hear you. Can you come a little closer? You know, I still can't hear you. I'm old. I can't hear you. Please come a little closer. Well, finally, the guy stepped across the bar, and as soon as he did, he said, bailiff, arrest that man, and he put him in jail. So if you ever step across the bar in court, you want to do so only after reserving your rights. If you step across the bar with no condition whatsoever, they can do whatever they want to with you. All right, so let's see here. We're running at 8:42. I don't want to blather on too much longer. We'll get to any questions that we might have. Let's see. Advertising in the newspaper. So folks get confused about this because Minnesota has a piece of paper that comes out the printer when you register the name that says you may have to advertise in the newspaper for your filing to be valid. Check your local state laws. You do not have to abide by the Minnesota law if you're in another state. If you're in Minnesota, simply file your assumed name filing in the newspaper. Why a newspaper? Well, they put things in the newspaper, obituaries, right? They put deaths, they put births. They used to put all kinds of things, and it makes it public. Why? Because it's a public newspaper, right? So there's a couple things you can do to make whatever you do public. You can go file it into local records at your local courthouse. You can walk in with a legal filing, and like, what do they do with land titles? What do they do with mortgage documents? What do they do with marriage certificates? Those things get filed into the public, right? Only time you can't see something in the public is when it's sealed or not made public. Like in some states, criminal records aren't public, so you can't just walk in and pull them. In some states, divorce records aren't public, and in some states they are. It just depends on the state that you're in, okay? Now, we do have a process. When somebody asked a question a couple of weeks ago about sending your documents into the Big Ten agencies, because part of this assumed name, and I hate to use assumed name process. It's not a process. You're simply abiding by the law. Every state has assumed name laws. And if you're doing business with a business name and you don't have it registered, you are outside the law. So we're just getting within the law. But there are documents that we often send off to other agencies. The folks who listen to my calls regularly know what we're talking about. Things like a notice of status, notice to cease and desist. What else is there? There's a notice of non-decedent, and we send those things in. Why? Well, if you are acting as the all caps name and you think you are the all caps name, you're acting as a dead person. You're a decedent, D-E-C-E-D-N-T, decedent or decedent. I don't know how you say it. I can barely speak English, much less legalese. So decedent, decedent. You are not a decedent once you register the legal name. You're not dead. Okay. All businesses are not alive. All corporations are not alive. You could say they're dead things, but they're not really dead. A rock isn't dead. It was just never alive. It's just not alive. So by filing a notice of non-decedent, you're letting these agencies know that you have separated, that you are no longer the individual. The individual goes away. You're not an individual. That has important ramifications after you register the name, because how can you be made liable for taxes, any kind of tax? Because all taxes apply to individuals, right? All income taxes apply to individuals, okay? So when you send the packets in, then folks say, well, should I send this to this agency, this to this agency? Make one packet and send it to all 10 agencies, okay? Do it that way. Now, at the current time, it's my understanding that we do on one of those documents, we put a thumbprint with blood. And at the moment, what I did is I'm doing all 10 of them with a bloody thumbprint. Handle that as you will. Why blood? Blood's currency. Blood is the thing that makes you alive. Okay. So to the people that have questions about what to send to which agency, and if you've watched my other Zoom videos, you know what I'm talking about here with sending things into the agencies. One of the agencies that you're going to be sending a packet into is the, oh, help me out here. The agency that is over NCIC, the National Crime Information, FTC, Federal Trade Commission. Okay. The Federal Trade Commission is over NCIC. What is NCIC? National Crime Information Center. So if you get pulled over, a cop is going to run that legal name, that social, that date of birth. He's going to run it through two separate databases. He's going to run it in the state database, and he's going to run it into a federal database. By running it through the state database, he will know whether or not you have a warrant in, or your legal name has a warrant in the state that he's in. In Kentucky, the database is called LENK, L-E-N-K, Law Enforcement Network of Kentucky. For your state, it'll probably be something different. Okay, but how does a cop in Kentucky know you have a warrant out on that legal name in Iowa? He runs it through NCIC, the National Crime Information Center. Now, that database I used to think was owned and controlled by the FBI. Turns out it isn't. It is owned and controlled by the Federal Trade Commission. Think about this. Remember this sentence. It's very important. All crimes are commercial, period. All crimes are commercial. That's it. So what is the database where they keep track of what crimes folks have committed? It's a commercial database maintained by the Federal Trade Commission. And real quick, I want to show you guys something. This is something we posted in the group earlier. I'm going to show you a 1938 birth certificate. And I'm going to go back to screen sharing to do it. And then we're going to move on to something else. I want you to look at this particular document. This was the first time I ever found this was with my mother. She was born in 1944. And I was studying stuff and I came across this. And it really showed me what this game was all about, how it was all commerce. And I'm just bringing that up now. Let me, here we go. Let me find a better one, because this one is really small. There's something at the top of it that I want you to see, and I may just have to go to our page. Here we go. Okay, let me go back to screen sharing. This is an old, and they did these back in the 30s and 40s. Share screen. All right, for those of you who are listening to this call later, I'm just showing you don't have to look at this if you're driving or something. Don't run out of the road, okay? All right, this is an old 1930s birth certificate. You'll find these in the 30s and 40s. And what does it say at the top? Well, first off, right in the middle, it says notification of birth registration. The birth has been registered, not recorded, registered. They're different. At the very top, it's got what? It has a corporate fiction, a corporation known as the United States of America. And right under that, it says what? Department of Commerce. United States of America, Department of Commerce. This is a commercial document. Now, I don't get into much to trying to figure out how to hack into the birth certificate account or anything like that, but you just need to know that this is all about commerce. All crimes are commercial. Your birth certificate is a commercial document. Well, your certificate of birth or your notification of birth registration or certificate of live birth. A birth certificate is what you get from the hospital. Those are those forms that the hospital gives you. There's often a footprint on it or something like that. Those are different. That's why when you go to the DMV with a birth certificate, they'll say, we can't use this. You needed a certificate of birth from the Department of Vital Statistics. What does the Department of Vital Statistics keep? They keep death records, birth records, marriage records, right? Divorce records. They keep fictitious business name records. They're all kept in most states by the same entity, by the same agency. Okay, you'll see them all under the same thing, which is often the Department of Vital Statistics, right? But it's all commercial. Know that when you go to court, you're participating in commerce. Know that anytime you do anything in the public, you're participating in commerce. If you stick a coin into a vending machine, you're participating in commerce. Okay. Let's see. It is 8:52. What we're going to do now is turn the floor over to the group to see if anybody has any questions about anything. I think we might have had a person or two join. We might have had a man or woman join tonight who's got questions. English is a slave language, by the way. It's very difficult to use English and not speak as a slave. I'm constantly having to correct what I say because I know that what I said wasn't right. Like we may have had a person join. No persons join. It was just us men and women, right? Department of Commerce. This is a message from someone. Like Department of Commerce has the original. Let me open up my chat. There's several things in chat here. Hey, look at that. Okay. W-4 process obliterates CPS case or criminal cases, most likely any case. So the W-4 process I haven't dug into yet, but we got some folks on the call who've dug into what's called the W-4 process. I'm going to be learning more about that later, but I don't know much about it right now. Where does it say what you just said about the individual? Well, that's just what I've derived from it. An individual is an unregistered person because you can't be an individual unless you are the legal name, right? Because if you try, okay, let's say you want to get a document notarized, okay? And you tell the notary, I'm not the legal name, so I'm going to be signing differently. I'm going to be using my given name and surname. And let's just say you show a passport. Okay. And the passport it's not legal identification. And I'm using the passport instead of the driver's license because the driver's license it's a legal document. It's a legal ID. What is an ID? You ID an entity. You don't ID a man or a woman, just an entity, right? So a living man or woman cannot be identified. Why? Because we constantly change. We're always dropping off skin cells. We grow, we get older. Our nose hairs grow, our ear hairs grow. We always look different, right? So but take the passport, though. The passport is different. The passport lacks three things that make it a legal ID. It does not have a legal name. It does not have a domicile. What is a domicile? That's the business address of the business. And it does, in the US anyway, it doesn't have a nationality. It will say United States. United States is not a nationality. American is a nationality. Canadian is a nationality. French is a nationality. But United States is a corporation. So there's three things that the passport is lacking to be an ID. It's lacking a legal name, a domicile, and a nationality. But they'll still accept it a lot of times. Why? Because that's the out for us men and women who've registered the legal name. You shouldn't even have a driver's license if you are not an entity. If you're not the legal name, if you separated yourself from the legal name by registering a legal name as a business with the Secretary of State, as you should, then you are no longer an individual, because an individual is what? It's one entity. It's taking two things. An individual is taking two things, which is a man and a legal name, and it's turning it into one entity. Okay. And that one entity, you're acting as your body is the surety for the name. Okay. That's why when you go to jail, they're holding your body as surety for the name. That's why when you post bail, your body's no longer being held as surety. You can go, but they hold the bail instead as the surety for the legal name. And yes, there's been times in my life where I was in such a fix that the only solution I had without the information was to walk around with bail in my pocket. Okay, sometimes it happens, but they can only arrest and charge the legal name. And if that legal name is a business, how can they hold you? You put them in a very good fix when you register the legal name. Okay. I don't even think individual is listed inside of Black's Law Dictionary. Let's look real quick. I love looking up words on these calls because when I look up a word on the call, I go directly to the word. When I'm talking to somebody and I look up a word, I go directly to the word. When I'm sitting on the couch or at the table by myself and I try to look up a word in Black's Law, it's like a dog chasing a squirrel, man. All the different words are so interesting, and you learn so much just by reading Black's Law. If you don't have Black's Law, you need Black's Law. Let's see. Individual. Oh, individual. It is in here. Oh, let's look. Let's read. Individual. As a noun, this term denotes a single person. A single person. As distinguished from a group or class. A single person. So a man or woman who thinks that they are the legal name, right? A single person. Okay, so an individual is that legal name, but in order for it to have any driving power, it has to have a man or woman behind it. As a noun, this term denotes a single person as distinguished from a group or class, and also very commonly a private or natural person as distinguished from a partnership, corporation, or association. A private or natural person. Now keep in mind here that a natural person is what? It's a human being. It's a colorable man. Why don't they just say that an individual is a man or woman? Wouldn't that be much simpler? Why do they go to all this trouble to dance around that? Because an individual isn't a man or a woman. Okay. The law cannot deal with men and women. It can only deal in this statutory law that we have. It can only deal with business entities. It can only deal with legal persons. Okay. But it is said that this restrictive signification is not necessarily inherent in the word, and that it may, in proper cases, include artificial persons. Boom. I'm going to read that again. But it is said. What dictionary includes the words "it is said"? You ever look up a word in a Webster's dictionary and see it say "it is said"? It is said that this restrictive signification is not necessarily inherent in the word, and that it may, in proper cases, include artificial persons. As an adjective, individual means pertaining or belonging to or characteristic of one single person. There you go. An individual is a man or a woman who thinks that they are the legal name. And when you register the name, you're separating those two entities. And it comes in very handy, especially when somebody wants to arrest the legal name, or tax the legal name, or charge the legal name. All right. Department of Commerce has original birth certificate and corporate documents. Yes, I believe that's true too. It's all commercial. Mike says Kentuckian is a nationality. That is true. Look up what citizenship is. You know, there's several classes of citizenship. This can be found in Supreme Court rulings. Okay. When they say citizen, there's different classes of citizen. If you look at if you go pull a court record that has your legal name on it, if you go look at a license that has your legal name on it, if you go look at anything from the state that has a legal name on it, they're in all capital letters. That's an old Roman practice. They would use different ways of forming the names to denote different classes of citizenship in Rome. Slaves had their names capitalized. Make sense now? All right. Now, does anyone on the call have any question about anything they're dealing with or any thought or anything? I can give a stab at trying to answer, or maybe somebody else can answer. We'll see. Ooh, no questions? Man, we need to collect more questions before the calls. If anybody's trying to speak, you got to take your mic off of mute, or you can ask it in the chat if you want. Otherwise, it is 9 o'clock. Oh my gosh, it's 9 o'clock on the head. All right. Nobody's got any questions. We're going to call it quits for the day. And later this week, we're going to put out some more. Oh, ask away, Mike.
So
Thanks, Mike. You just totally ruined the 9 o'clock ending time. No, you're cool, man. Ask away.
hey, so it's time to renew the assumed name certificate. Have you checked that out yet?
I haven't. I've been waiting so I can record the process when I do it because I need to renew mine too.
Okay, so it says provide the contact and delivery information. So first and last. So I do it like normally, or I do it like the assumed name way with my first name, with my last name first.
For the delivery information, it doesn't matter, man. You can just do it normally because that has nothing to do with what you've registered. That's just the delivery information for anything that they mail, and they don't mail anything.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah.
you can
I just wanted to be
now
sure.
in the last name box, if you want to, you can put the first name and the comma, and in the first name box, you can put the last name and the period if you want. But it really doesn't matter, man. You can just put in the way you would normally for the all caps name, as if you're the all caps name. So first name in the first name box, last name in the last name box, and then the address without any qualifications.
There's no, they don't want an address. They all they want is email.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good then. They're going to send you a renewal certificate then via email. So that's good.
So it'll be Michael and then Mittenberg, right? Just
Yep.
upper and lower, right?
Yep. That's what I'd do.
All
That's
right.
fine.
All
Yeah.
right.
That doesn't change registration at all.
All right.
It has no effect on anything. Just make sure your email address is right and you're cool.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome. But yeah, when I renew mine, and the next time I file a Minnesota DBA, I'm going to record the process as I go so that we have a better video to show people how to do it. So we're still working on the website, by the way, and we'll be getting it live soon. As colder weather approaches, I keep saying as colder weather approaches, and it's getting in the 80s this week in Kentucky in November.
Oh, it got down to
So-
the 60s out here.
Oh, I bet you break out the winter coat.
We
used to
started fire.
I used to live in Oahu, and when it got down to 58 degrees when the night, we were all wearing winter coats and driving around looking at Christmas lights like it was winter. Yeah, windows were up in the car. It's crazy the change, and then you go to Minnesota and they're out there playing, baseball with their shirts off. It's crazy. It's 10 degrees below zero outside. It's nuts, Everybody's got different standards. But I'm willing to, if anybody has a topic for one of these Zoom meetings, let me know. One of the things that I was tempted to touch upon was the upcoming financial reset that we're about to see. I think that's generating a lot of fear in people because I think as a whole, a lot of folks see this coming, and we're getting ready to see what I call a quantum reset, a quantum financial reset. And there's going to be a lot of deception involved with that. And I don't think right now that a lot of folks see through what's getting ready to happen. but we are getting ready to see a massive financial reset. And never before has the entire world been on one currency, and never again will it happen again. Right now, the Federal Reserve note is the backing currency for all nations. And there are some nations moving away from that. Nations deal in petrodollars, right? And the reason that someone in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, North Korea, Japan, Ireland, Scotland, Yugoslavia, the reason that folks in those nations can register their name in the US is because the United States we have provided the financial system to the whole world. The central banking system is what we mean when we say we're spreading democracy. So what happens when we invaded Iraq? When I say we, I don't really mean me. I didn't invade Iraq. I got out of the military before all that happened, and I went in after the first Gulf War. So what happened? First thing that they did was they created a central bank, and they created a constitution. What is the definition of a constitutor? Someone who signs a constitution. A constitutor is someone who by simple agreement agrees to pay the debt of another. So when you claim constitutional rights, you're actually putting yourself in a lower class of citizenship. Okay. So your person has constitutional rights. You don't. And there's a reason why they dance around all this stuff on the federal level. It's a dog and pony show to make you think the legal name. So, okay, here's a big one. November 8th is coming up. You're going to go vote? Who gets to vote? Persons get to vote. Okay. I saw a commercial earlier on YouTube, because now they're even interrupting my songs in the middle. And this commercial said that, they flat out say it. They say, who you vote for is not public, but whether you vote or not is public. So get out and vote. So they're trying to shame people into getting out and voting, right? It's public whether you vote or not. You don't want to be one of those terrible citizens that don't vote. When I went to renew my driver's license several years ago, they handed me a piece of paper and it had 3 questions written on it. Now, this was not an official government form. It looked like they had given it to the lowest IQ person in the office, and that person had used their butt cheeks to put it on the plate and glass. It was terrible. It was like cockeyed. It was messy. And I was like, I could do a better job at home and send you all a better looking form than what you've got here. But I don't remember what the last 2 questions were, question 2 and 3. But I do remember what question number 1 was. Question number 1 asked, are you a U.S. citizen? And it had U.S. citizen in all caps. So I thought, I've had this license for like 3 decades now. Why do I keep getting asked if I'm a U.S. citizen? Simple. As Obama said in a speech, all government is done with consent of the governed. We're told that, right? And we're made to think that the consent of the governed means the whole group of folks. Oh, no, 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 no. It goes all the way down to the man or woman. I started to say individual. It goes all the way down to each single man and woman. You have to agree to be governed. How do you agree? We constantly give our consent. We turn 16 in most states. We turn 16, we run down with our certificate of live birth, and we ask the government to give us a license to do that which we can already do. People say, oh, you can't drive without a license. No, actually you can. Did it yesterday. The car went just fine, didn't have a problem. People are like, well, what are you going to do when you get pulled over? Well, the cop's going to try to contract with me. I'm going to show him my assumed name certificate. And because I think he wants to contract with me, I'm going to ask him for his. And if he's not registered, then I've got a little warning notice that I'm going to hand him and let him know, and dude, I appreciate what you're doing out here, but you're breaking some laws by pulling me over. Okay. So why did they have to ask me if I'm a U.S. citizen? Because they have to continually get your consent. That's what voting does. When you register to vote, you're agreeing to be a U.S. citizen. You're agreeing to be an individual. You can't even sign an individual tax return, right, once you register the legal name, because if you sign, if just an all cursive signature, you're agreeing that you are an individual and you're no longer an individual. So after you register the name, call the IRS up and ask them what form you need to file in order to file your personal income taxes, because you'll have no personal income taxes. And I know one guy that actually had a good long conversation with the IRS. He put it online. I might have to find it and put it up. And they pretty much admitted that he's right, but then they don't want to talk to him. It scares them. When they see that we've registered the name, they tend to shy away. Can I put Michael Edward? Yes, you can, Mike. You can put Michael Edward as the first name. Absolutely. By the way, folks, you don't have a first name, a middle name, or a last name. Your person has a first name, middle name, or last name. You were born, you were given a given name. Mine is William Ernest. And that's why when your mama was mad at you, she didn't use your middle name. She used your entire first name. And then you have a surname or a family name, which you inherited. That's your more real name than your name. Okay. So I go by William Ernest to the Farrell family. And I do business as William Ernest Farrell. So that's actually how I signed my name. So people ask me all the time, let's do a screen share real quick. I want to show folks. People ask, well, how do you sign your name? I no longer do. It would be a very limited situation indeed where I would actually sign an all cursive name, because by signing an all cursive name and just doing that, you are given you're not qualifying it. You're given you're agreeing to everything on the document. When you put that cursive signature on there, you've accepted all the contracts in that document and all the cascading contracts. The driver's license is full of cascading contracts. Okay. People say, well, there's no terms and conditions on the license. Yeah, but you're agreeing that you're a U.S. citizen. They actually make you admit to that. I had to sign a form saying I was a U.S. citizen the last time that's what we were just talking about, where I renewed my license, right? So here's how I sign my name now. I actually printed. Okay. So I'll sign my name, Farrell Cohen, William Ernest. And I always put a period after that, because I don't, if it's going to be standing alone, I'll put a period, because I want that to be the last bit. I don't want anybody to put anything after that. A period means full stop. Okay. It's actually very important, that period. But I'll do this, Farrell William Ernest. Okay. And then depending on how long the line is, let's say that the line is really long. Okay. I hate short signature boxes. I can't get everything in there I want. Maybe eventually one of these days I'll just start appending my own signature page. See next page for signature. William Ernest, DBA, William Ernest Farrell II. There's my signature. And then I'll write these words. And these words are terribly powerful. They're great. Okay. Without recourse. If you look up, I'll have to share it in our group. There is a video by a guy who goes by urlaw.com. Okay. Law. It's on, he's on YouTube too. You can look up his videos, Law. Solid dude, knows his stuff. Okay. He talks about how much power is in the without recourse. And if you want to keep going, put a comma and put all rights reserved. Now I know that a lot of people are using things like this, UCC 1-308, right? I'm starting to move away from that. And people say, well, why did you change your mind on something? Because I get that sometimes. People are like, you're doing thing one way, you're doing it another. Why are you changing your mind? This is all a learning process. The way that I did things a year ago is not the way I'm doing things now. And the way I do things a year from now may not be the way I'm doing things currently, right? I mean, we as we learn, we do things differently. But I'm moving away from I've never liked using that UCC 1-308 because what change it? I don't want to be locked into their codes. All rights reserved. Okay. Those two things, without recourse and all rights reserved, your average man or woman's not going to know what those mean. But if you research what those mean, they're very powerful. And then you can also write this without prejudice. That's also another thing you can put. But if you don't do anything, if all you do even if you sign your name in cursive, somebody's got a gun to your head and they say, sign your name in cursive. Okay. Do this, put cursive name. I can't write in cursive on this. So I'm just writing the words cursive name, and then put without recourse. Just write without recourse. Okay. That's very powerful. The guy from urlaw.com talks about how he was in court, and he actually conceded on a couple points in an IRS case. And because when you face an adversary, sometimes you don't get a complete win. It's okay to get a 95% win. Okay, so he conceded on a couple points, and I think he was fighting 10 years in prison for income tax evasion or something like that, and they ended up giving him like 3 months probation. So that's a win, right? I mean, sometimes you got to give the other side a little something so they can save face, right? So he conceded on a couple points, and then he wrote without recourse after he signed a document, and the court case, it brought the courtroom to a stop. And the judge said, wait a minute, you conceded on a couple points. When you put without recourse, we can't even enforce those things. So they had to qualify the without recourse signature to not include the couple things that he did concede to. Okay, so he gave them that. But when you write without recourse, you're basically saying that the other side has no recourse. Okay. And so most of the times when you sign those things, like say you're getting a bank account or you're entering into contract with someone and you write without recourse, people say, well, that's a dirty little trick. No, it isn't. Everybody can look that up and see what it means. I think it's in Black's Law. So there's all kinds of things that you can do once you understand how to fight. Remember at the beginning of this call, I read something that indicated that even the United States government recognizes that Congress is a battlefield. And when you go onto a battlefield, if you like, let's say Mike and I are in a boxing ring. Mike knows more about boxing. Who's more likely to win? Mike. Does that mean Mike's fighting dirty? No, he knows more about boxing. If you fight somebody in a chess game or a tennis game, if you go to a tennis court and your opponent knows more about tennis and they're better at you and they practice more and they learn more, you're probably going to lose. That's just the nature of combat. We are in a realm where we are set up as an adversary in everything. So let's say you and I are sitting at the kitchen table talking, and you look at me and you say, hey, you want to go to lunch? We are at that moment adversaries. Okay. There's 4 ways I can respond to that offer. I can be silent, I can argue, I can give a conditional acceptance, or I can give an unconditional acceptance. It wouldn't be good to give an unconditional acceptance to that offer of let's go to lunch. Who's paying? Who's driving? We need to get those terms and conditions straight. And the majority of the folks that I deal with when it comes to contractual matters are in the mess that they're in because they had a really crappy contract. They didn't get all the terms and conditions outlined. Okay, it isn't that the other party necessarily broke the contract. It's just the other party thought they were operating under different terms and conditions, you know? So I don't know if people could see my screen before. It just popped up a mail that said participants can see your screen. So I'm going to go back to stopping screen sharing because I've been rattling on as if everybody can see my face. That's funny. All right. Anybody else have any questions whatsoever? Facing any case, anything? Cool. It's 9:17. Let's call it a night, and I'll get some more material out for you guys because there's so much stuff in my head that I want to share that is driving me nuts. I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks for listening. And if you listen to this, audio after it's recorded, if you listen to it on YouTube after it's been recorded, please visit and join our Facebook group. Our Facebook group goes by Uncommon Law Conversations, formerly known as Common Law Conversations. Back in 2000, we started it under the name Free Breathers, and that name may still be in the link. So look for one of those. You'll find us. On YouTube, it's www.youtube.com/Ferrell Bill, FERRELLBILL. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for joining.